All right. All right. Shalom, Israel. Shalom. We want to say Shabbat. Shalom again. Want to give all praises, glory, and honor be to the Most High God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob for this beautiful day of rest. It's your brothers from the Hope of the Elect, man. You see Brother Isaiah speaking, right? Joined by the brothers Danal, brothers Azrael, Brother Obadiah, and the brother Baruch, man. The young YNs for Yahweh Shah, right? So today's lesson, matter of fact, is covering who the world calls Jesus Christ, who we refer to him in the Hebrew as Yahweh Shah, right? His, I guess you could say, what do they call it? Divinity, right? His divine essence, nature, being. The title is, Jesus is God, argue with your mammy. And we're going to prove on this lesson exactly that. So before we go any further, let's play the blowing of the shofar, man, to kind of, usher in the spirit, set the stage, sound the alarm, let the people know that we're gathering together to have a meeting, a convocation. I'm trying to share. Oh, well, I guess I got to share a window. Yeah, let me share entire screen. Okay. Why won't let me do that? I ain't never had a problem like this before. Oh, okay, I see. Never mind. I'm tripping.
There you go.
So y'all gonna see yourselves, but uh, let's play this, man. Blowing on the shofar. Let me know if y'all can hear. All right, man. So that was the blowing of the shofar. I'm trying to get back to the screen. Oh, Salaki. Here we go. Yeah, here we go. So let me exit out of this. But yeah, that was the blowing of the shofar, man. Again, I think the brother Danah put it together, but he took a compilation of the brother Obadiah blowing the shofar. Think a video of him and brother Azrael blowing the shofar together. So, you know, like we said, we just trying to usher and set the stage. But today's
La,
lesson again.
that was my how you say it, ahava, I think.
Alma?
That was my ama. Yeah, my mom.
Emo.
Yeah, that was my mom. And the first blowing was Obadiah.
Oh, she put that together.
Yeah, Khan. She
Okay,
edited.
time.
And then the first blowing was Obadiah. The second blowing was us this year at Trumpets.
Oh, okay. Okay, Con.
It was a
Well,
clip from us before we did the lesson at Trumpets.
okay. Well, let me give the proper respects, man. Um, a mighty shalom to the sister Tuesday's child, man. Putting together the blowing of the shofar video for the brothers of the hopeful elect. And shout out to the brothers, for having the spirit to do so. Because if they didn't do it, then we wouldn't have it, at least one of our own. So, but without further ado, man, let's get right into the lesson. We're not gonna waste no time. We ain't got no videos to go into, so all we got is really Bible precepts. Just the breaking down of the Word of God is not going to be too. Um, I typed in the wrong thing. 1 Corinthians 8, but it's not going to be too hot to handle, pretty much for an extent. To an extent, so it's not going to be too hot to handle. But we just want to get an understanding of why the title is the way it is, and what are we really trying to? What is the real message that we're trying to convey here? So the first precept we're gonna go into, right, is the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 8, and we're gonna start at verse number 6. And I want to do something different instead of left to right, right? Instead of left to right, let's read right to left like the Hebrew is written. You know, let's read right to left like the Hebrew is written. And we're gonna start with 1 Corinthians chapter 8 and starting at verse number 6. Before you read, Brother Baruch, let me zoom in a little bit more. 1 Corinthians chapter 8, verse number 6.
It's the book of First Corinthians, chapter 8, starting at verse 6. But to us there is but one God, the Father, of whom are all things, and we in him, and one Lord, Jesus Christ, by whom are all things, and we by him.
Right. So if you thought the lesson was going to further prove that Jesus is the Most High God, you've been deceived. This is clickbait, right? This is actually doubling down on our stance that the Most High God is the Most High God alone, and who the world calls Jesus Christ is the Son of God without a shadow of a doubt. We're going to go into various scriptures. We're even going to go into the language a little bit just to kind of get an understanding of what certain words mean. But this is our foundational precept right here. Read it one more time, Brother Baruch.
Verse 6 from the top. But to us there is but one God, the Father, of whom are all things, and we in him, and the one Lord Jesus Christ, by whom are we selected, by whom are all things, and we by him.
Con, right? So again, man, uh, there's one Lord and there's one God. The God is the Father. The Lord is who the world calls Jesus Christ. They're not the same. First Corinthians 8 and 6 substantiates that, right? But what we want to do is establish who the Most High God is, because see, a lot of people think that Most High God is just a generic term, but in reality, it actually is somebody in particular, right? So let's go to the book of Deuteronomy 32, and we're going to read verse number 8. I think I spelled Deuteronomy wrong, but you get the gist. Deuteronomy chapter 32. Let's read verse number 8. And who's reading next? Brother Danal, I'm going to cut you off. Well, I'm not going to cut you off. I'm going to just tell you to stop after the first 5. Stop after the first 5 words.
And verse number 8.
Yes, sir.
Deuteronomy chapter 32 and verse number 8, it says, when the Most High divided two.
Right, right. When the Most High divided, right? When the Most High divided to, right? Again, when the Most High divided to, now we're going to hold that. We're going to hold that, Brother Nanal. I'm going to have you read one more thing. Psalms 83. We're going to go down to verse number 18. Let's read this right here. Psalms 83 and 18.
Psalms 83 and 18, that men may know that thou, whose name is alone is Jehovah, art the Most High over all the earth.
So that men may know that thou, whose name, what does that say? With for everybody, or does that say alone?
Alone.
That says alone. So that men may know that thou, whose name alone is Jehovah, right, art the Most High over all the earth. Right? So going back to Deuteronomy 32 and verse number 8, let's read that one more time. You can read the full verse this time. Deuteronomy 32 and 8.
The book of Deuteronomy chapter 32 and 8, when the Most High divided to the nations their inheritance, when he separated the sons of Adam, he set the bounds of the people according to the number of the children of Israel.
Right, man. Again, when the Most High, we just read that the Most High name alone is Jehovah. He's the Most High God over all the earth. So there's a specific person that we're referring to when we say the Most High. It's not multiple people. It's a specific, right? It's a title, and it's only given to one person, the person whose name is Jehovah, which we know that isn't necessarily Christ's name, right? Uh, let's get another precept. Let's go to the book of Mark, chapter 5, verse number 7, right? Mark 5 and 7. All we doing right now is setting the foundation that Jesus Christ is not the Most High God. And we're using various scriptures to further prove that point, right? Because if Christ is the Most High God, then some people have a misunderstanding, and we're going to start right here to prove it. But let's read this in Mark 5 and 7.
The book of Mark chapter 5 and verse 7, and cried with a loud voice and said, what have I to do with thee, Jesus, thou Son of the Most High God? I adjure thee by God that thou torment me not.
Man, it says, let's read it one more time. Read it one more time. Matter of fact, before you read it, let's view the chapter, right? And let's start at verse number Man, let's just start at verse number 6. Let's read 6, 7.
6, 7.
Oh my gosh, childish. Let's just read 6 and 7, man. We could get the context.
Man,
But let's just read 6 and 7.
The book of Mark, chapter 5, 6, 7.
Man.
But when he saw Jesus afar off, he ran and worshipped him, and cried with a loud voice and said, "What have I to do with thee, Jesus, thou Son of the Most High God? I adjure thee by God that thou torment me not."
So this is Legion talking to Christ, and he said, "What have I to do with thee, Jesus?" He's acknowledging who the person he's talking to is. That's his name. And then he says, "Thou Son of the Most High God." Remember, man, anytime you're dealing with things like Son of the Most High, is God, and stuff like that, the phrase Son of God, Son of the Most High God, is prepositional phrase, right? Son being the highest noun because it's the main word being described. What is Jesus? The Son, right? And then of God is a prepositional phrase because it's solidifying, it tells us kind of what kind of son he is, right? So Jesus is the Son of the Most High God, right? And the Most High God is the category. Jesus is the Son thereof, right? Subject to the Most High God. So these are scriptures that we're using to just kind of, again, substantiate that Jesus is not the Most High God. You don't have to go into every little, I guess you could say, detail about every word or every little detail about, various scriptures. Sometimes all you got to do is read and put line upon line, here a little and there a little, and you can get your answer. But let's go read John chapter 17 and verse number 3, right? Let's go to John 17 and 3. Because all we're doing right now is reading. Reading. You know what I'm saying? Reading. Let's read this, Brother Oak.
Con. He says John chapter 17 and verse 3. And this is life eternal, that I might know thee, the only true God, and the Son of God, whom thou hast sent.
Right. And this is life eternal, that thou might know thee, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, whom thou hast sent. It's a distinction. When you say and, it's a distinction, right? From the only true God and the Son, right? And there's other various precepts, like we just read, going back to Mark 5 and 7. Going back to Mark 5 and 7. Oh, read this one more time. Mark 5 and 7.
Come, Mark chapter 5 and verse 7, and cried with a loud voice and said, What have I to do with thee, Son of God, the Son of the Most High God? I adjure thee by God that thou torment me not.
Right. What have I to do with thee, Jesus, right? Thou Son of the Most High God. So we can clearly see, as we continue to read the Bible, man, just the I guess you could say the harmony, right? Fluidity of the Bible is not even supporting the understanding of the Trinity, as some may believe it. It's not understanding I guess you could say, the triune nature of Christ or God. People try to label it to be. I think that there's precepts that we're going to get into later that kind of why they get hung up on that understanding, but nonetheless, we already in the first how long we've been on here, 14 minutes of the video, have brought out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 scriptures that kind of destroys these points, but there's more, like what's his name said in
Wait,
Scary
there's
Movie.
more.
Yeah, but wait, there's more, right? So let's get into a little bit more. The title, right? God, or in the Greek, Theos Elohim, it doesn't necessarily imply absolute identity, right? So a lot of people would like to go to uh, John 1 and 1 in verses where it's calling like uh, Jesus is called kind of God versus like John 1 and 1 and John 20 and 28. But we're not going to dissect those verses in particular, right? We're going to dissect what the title means, right? In the scriptural context, right? So for instance, let me go to the Blue Letter Bible. Let me share this tab and let me First of all, zoom in because I know that it's kind of hard to see. And let me go to, let's just say John 20, 28. Right. Right. And again, we'll dissect a few of these verses as counter arguments that people like to try to make. We're not really necessarily running from it, but to keep on track to the message that we're trying to convey, we're just going to deal subtly with getting the understanding of these words in particular. So, Baruch, I know it's your time to speak, King. So if you could just read what you see on this screen. Matter of fact, before we read it, let me play this right here. Let me play this right here.
Strong's G 2316. Theos. Theos.
Right. So Strong's G 2316, Theos, which is also known as God, right? In the Hebrew, that's in the Greek is called Theos. I think in the Hebrew it would be referred to as like Elohim, right? But read this root word etymology right here, brother Baruch.
It says of uncertain affinity, a deity, especially with the supreme. I can't really see it. My screen real quick.
Supreme, especially with the supreme divinity, right? Let's go down to the outline of biblical usage, right? What is it? What are the definitions in the outline of biblical usage?
A god or goddess, a general name, a deity or divinity, the Godhead, Trinity, God the Father, the first person in the Trinity,
Right.
Christ, the second person of the Trinity,
Uh-huh.
Holy Spirit, the third person in the Trinity, spoken of
Right.
the only, oh my bad, spoken of the only and true God, refers to the things of God, his counsels, interest,
Things
You went
due
out,
to him.
I think he broke up.
Things due to him, whatever
Con.
can in any respect be likened unto God or reasonable him in any way, God's representative or vicergerent of magistrates and judges.
So all we getting the reason we wanted to read all this, right? The reason I wanted to have all this read is because all of this is showing is that it doesn't apply to a single I guess you could say person, right? It doesn't imply an absolute identity for a single being. It could be a representation of many different things. So as we read, the Most High God is even called Theos. Christ is even called Theos. You can refer to Theos even in certain instances where the Holy Spirit. Now, granted, this all says the first person Trinity, second person Trinity, third person Trinity. That's because, again, you got to take certain study instruments with a grain of salt. The people who put together Blue Letter Bible, they may have an ideology that there is a such thing as a Trinity. So that's their understanding. But we're not going to harp in on that right now. I'm just showing you that this word has different biblical usage throughout the Bible, right? And it can be representative of even the magistrates and judges, right? Whatever can in any respect be likened unto God or resemble him in any way, right? So just giving you an understanding of how these words kind of work. Again, Theos in Theos in the Greek and Hebrew in the excuse me, Theos in the Greek and Elohim in the Hebrew is what I'm trying to say, are not always exclusive names for the supreme being. They can denote a powerful being, and like we read, judges, magistrates, rulers, even a representation of God, right? Get an example. Let's go to Psalms 82 and 6. Right. We're gonna stay in the blue letter. Psalms 82. Psalms 82. Right. If I could have a brother read this, whoever was next after Baruch.
Psalms 82 and 6. I have said, ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High.
Right. Ye are gods, right? What is that word there for gods? Oh, surprise. It's Elohim, right? Let's listen to it.
Strong's H 430, entry 1. Eloach. Eloach.
Now they pronounce it a little different, right? But right
Strong's
here,
H 430, entry 1. Eloach. Eloach.
right?
Second
So
entry, Elohim. Elohim. And the third entry, Eloach. Eloach.
so 3 different entries. The entry I like to use is the second entry. That literally sounds like the way it's, I guess you could say, abbreviated right here, which is Elohim, right? So even Elohim in the Hebrew, right? Again, it's not necessarily an exclusive title. You can refer to this as, again, rulers, judges, divine ones, angels, gods, plural. You know what I'm saying? Like the true God, God. You can. This is not a indicative title to somebody in specific. It just can denote like a great power, a representative, right? So going back to Psalms 82 and 6, right? Where can you read this one more time, Brother Denal?
Khan, I have said, ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High.
Right. Here uh, in this verse, human judges are called Elohim because they represent God's authority. And remember, Elohim, Theos, even someone that can represent the Most High God can be called Elohim or Theos. So the judges of Israel, right, they were referred to as Elohim. Even going back to the book of Exodus chapter 21, where he first called us judges, right? Elohim is the same word, right? Same thing with Exodus chapter 7 and verse number 1. Let's go there again. And if you're confused about why we're going here, let me know so I can let you know why we're going here. We're going to these different places using the word Theos Elohim just to kind of show that there's multiple people that are called God. And the reason that we're going to these places to show that there's multiple people or representations called God is because there are people who try to build the argument that Jesus is the Most High God because of verses like John 1 and 1 and John 20 and 28. All right. Again, John 1 and 1 and John 20 or 28. Matter of fact, before we read this, let's go read those real quick, just so people can understand. We're not going to get into the woodworks. We're just going here to kind of show why we're going to these different places. But let's read this in John 1 and 1.
Khan, the book of John, chapter 1 and verse 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God.
Now, people are going to say this is Christ. He's being referred to as God. Why? Because in the beginning was the Word. And we know the Word, we refer to Christ as the Word. And the Word was who? With God. And the Word was what? Was God, right? So there's people who built their premise that Jesus is the Most High God because of, and the Word was God, right? The same thing with John chapter 20, right? Let's go to John 20 and let's read John 20 and 28.
John chapter 20, verse 28. And Thomas answered and said unto him, My Lord and my God.
My what?
My Lord and my God.
And my God. Again, if you go to this verse, you're going to probably see the word theos right here. The same thing with John chapter 1 and verse 1. And that's why we're going to Psalms 82 and 6, Exodus 7 and 1, and other various places to just prove to you that theos is not necessarily an absolute title for one person. It can be a representation of multiple different things. It's really just when you see a great power, 9 times out of 10, you're going to see the word theos or Elohim. And that's the point we're trying to convey right now. So stay with us, bear with us, because I don't want anybody getting sidetracked as to why we're going to these different verses. It's not just we're just hitting up scriptures and just reading scriptures killing the point. Sometimes you got to go into what the words mean to kind of better help understand the message that's trying to be conveyed. So let's read this in Exodus 7 and 1. Whose ever turn it is.
He's on Baruch.
Exodus chapter 7, and starting at verse 1. And the Lord said unto Moses, See, I have made thee a God to Pharaoh, and Aaron thy brother shall be thy prophet.
Right. The Lord said unto Moses, I made you a what? An Elohim to Pharaoh, and Aaron thy brother shall be thy prophet, right? What is the word right here for God? Elohim, this word, right? Strong's H430. It has 3 entries. We like to go with the second entry, which says Elohim, right? If you see this right here in the Hebrew parsing, right? So the God told Moses, I made you a God unto Pharaoh, right? It says, I made you an Elohim unto Pharaoh. Moses was not the Most High, but he functioned as the Most High's representative, right? The same thing with John 1 and 1. Now let's go to John 1 and 1 in the blue letter. It's just different places that we're going to prove that. And this is the simple argument. We know that there are stronger arguments, but again, this is the simple argument that people try to use. So for those who are kind of still on the milk, you can refer back to the first 14 minutes of this lesson, right? And go read those 5 scriptures that we brought out to kind of show you that there's a distinction between Christ and the Most High, right? And for those who may be a little bit more studied, from 14 minutes to where is our time at right now to 26, this is maybe something that you could kind of get into if you believe that because of John 1 and 1, John 20:28, where it calls Christ God or Theos, that he is the Most High. This is for you, right? But again, there's going to be more. There's going to be a lot more that we're going to go into. So just bear with us. Let's read this in John chapter 1 and verse 1.
John, the book of John, chapter 1 and verse 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God.
Right, man. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Now, I had to use ChatGPT to kind of help me understand the Greek in this a little bit, right? And it gave me a sentence to kind of spell it out or say it, right? The Greek text is kai theos in ho logos, right? In this construction, theos, right? And this is just kind of the side note. It says, in this construction, theos, God, right, is without the definite article, the. While the first occurrence, the word was with the God, which is pros ton theon, has it, right? This is a qualitative use indicating that the word is divine in nature, not that he is the one and only supreme being. A more nuanced translation is the word was divine. The verse itself shows a distinction. The word was with God and the word was divine, right? So that's kind of how it would be read, in a more nuanced translation. But even still, again, the word was God. That word right here, Strong's G2316, Theos, which, like we saw, is referred to as God 1,320 times, lowercase God 13 times, God lead 3 times, God word 2 times, right? In miscellaneous use, 5 different occasions. But again, when you go into the biblical usage, the way it's used in the scriptures, it's not just specific to one person. It doesn't confirm the authority of one person. It actually confirms the authority of multiple people, right? Their power and their essence, their being, right? Their existence. So same thing with John 20 and 28. And then we'll get out of the blue letter, right? I know we already went here, but we're going to go here one more time. John 20 and 28. Let's read this one more time.
My turn.
Nah, it's on Azrael.
I just read.
You just read?
Yeah.
It is my turn. Okay. It is my turn.
Wait a minute. Hold on. I'm confused. Baruch just read Exodus 7 and 1. And then we went from Exodus 7 and 1 to John 1 and 1. You read John 1 and 1?
Baruch read John 20:28. Dinar read Exodus 7 and 1. And then we read John 1 and 1 again, which was
You
me.
skipped. No, Azrael, you read for me.
Oh,
I was supposed to go.
Who read John 20 and 28?
I think I read that.
Obadiah read John 20 and 28.
Oh, I did skip Dinar.
Well, read this then, brother Denard.
Which one we reading?
John 20:28. Salaki.
Again?
Yes,
John
sir.
20:28. And Thomas answered and said unto him, My Lord and my God.
Right. Again, that word God in there, Theos. Again, all I'm doing is just showing you that Theos is not necessarily the title to describe Christ or to describe the Most High itself. It's Theos, Elohim. They can be used to describe powers, people of great power and representation of the Most High God. It's not necessarily saying that when you see Theos, it just automatically just means that it's talking about the Most High God or Christ. You see what I'm saying? So uh, again, this it's an exclamation of awe and recognition of Christ, and his divine authority, just like what we see in Psalms 82:6, right? Uh, but let's go to other verses, right? Hebrews chapter 1, starting at verse 8. I don't think I'm going to pull up the Greek. I'm just going to use this right here because I'm just staying in the blue letter because we already right here. But I know if we go to the Apocrypha, we'll have to go back to the King James Bible online.org, right? But let's read this in Hebrews 1:8, Brother Azrael.
The book of Hebrews, chapter 1 and verse 8.
And we're going to read verse 9 too. Verse 8 and 9.
The book of Hebrews, chapter 8, 1, starting at verse 8. But unto the Son he saith, Thy throne, O God, is forever and ever. Thy scepter of righteousness is the scepter of the kingdom.
Uh-huh.
Thou hast loved righteousness and hated iniquity. Therefore God, even thy God, hath anointed thee with the oil of gladness above thy fellows.
Right, man. Therefore God, even thy God, this is a quote from Psalms 45, right? So we don't even have to go into the Greek because we already understand that theos is not necessarily used just for one person, and it's not necessarily used to describe somebody as the Most High himself. It's just used to describe a power, but Psalms 45, just Psalms. Let me pull up Psalms 45. Let's come here real quick, right? And let's read again verse 6 and 7, Brother Obadiah.
Verse 6. Thy throne, O God, is forever and ever. The scripture of thy kingdom is a right scripture. He said, Thou loveth righteousness and hateth wickedness. Therefore God, thy God, hath anointed thee with the oil of gladness above thy fellows.
Right. So going back to Hebrews 1:8, we can see it's a direct quote for Psalms chapter 45, verses 6 and 7. Hebrews 1:8 and 9, right? And these verses, the verse distinguishes between the Son, who was addressed as God, and his God who anointed him. Because again, what does it say right here, Brother Azrael? Could you read verse 9 one more time?
Thou hast loved righteousness and hated iniquity. Therefore God, even thy God, hath anointed thee with the oil of gladness above thy fellows.
Now, this is again debunking this whole Trinity thing. If Hebrews 1:8 affirms that Jesus Christ is in fact the Most High God, because Brother Azrael, read this one more time and put emphasis on the part that that people gonna use.
But unto the Son he saith, Thy throne, O God, is forever and ever. A scepter of righteousness is the scepter of thy kingdom.
Right. Like the brother emphasized, oh God, if Christ is in fact the Most High God, and when it says, but unto the Son, thy throne, oh God, if that affirms that he is the Most High God without a shadow of a doubt, then why? Let's read verse 9 one more time. Why does it say this phrase?
Verse 9, Thou hast loved righteousness and hated iniquity. Therefore God, even thy God,
Even what?
even thy God,
Okay.
hath anointed thee with an oil of gladness above thy fellows.
Right. How is it that the Son is the Most High God in verse 8, but then in verse 9, now he has a God? So if God has a God, how is he the Most High God? Again, let's read this one more time because we read it earlier, and I just think that sometimes we need a refresher when we read things.
82.
Salakia too, man. I remember back in the day, I've always somewhat been a student of the Bible, but back in the day, before I was in the truth, I had a girlfriend that, you know, we would always kind of debate about certain things in the Bible. One of the things we disagreed on was the Trinity. I was kind of slowly coming out of the Trinity mindset, um, you know, before I came into the truth. Part of that being is because my dad was an elder in the church and we had this mission statement. And I believe my father was like, yeah, when it gets down to this part of the mission statement, I don't say anything. And that part of the mission statement was God in three persons. And so that always kind of struck me like, why he don't say nothing? He don't believe in the Trinity. And so I started looking at it myself and I was like, you know what? I don't think Jesus is God. Now the burden of proof was hard to prove back then for me to who was my girlfriend at the time, because me and her understood God to be a name. We didn't understand it to be a title, right? So when they threw God around in the text, it was confusing because we would read things like we just read, right? Then we would read things how the angels would call him mighty God. Then we would read things that they say that, is Christ over man, and then or God, and he submitted to God, and he got it. So we would go back and forth, but the key element to understanding this, which the brothers are going over, is you have to understand the origin of these words and what these words actually mean, right? Because if one doesn't understand that God is a title, you don't know that title can be placed on other beings or entities. You would think that God's a name and that nobody can be God except for God. So if it's calling multiple people to be God, then the Trinity has to be true, right? So that's one thing I wanted to point out too. You have to understand that God is a title, right? And you can't make that title supersede common sense, right? It doesn't trump common sense, right? So that title is a title and it's not a name. But Khan, I yield.
Con. Then you on mute. You on mute. You on mute.
Khan, and you see multiple titles, not just God, man, right? So keep that same point in mind when you read throughout the Bible, because you'll see in Isaiah, I believe, where it says that it mentions that he'll be an everlasting father, right? But again, that word father is another title that can be placed on multiple people. Just because it's used for one person doesn't mean it's pertinent to that person in particular, and nobody else can be labeled that, right? So that's a good point, man. When you're reading the Bible, make sure you understand the difference between somebody's actual name and somebody's title.
Go ahead, Obadiah, because you were saying something too.
Con, yeah, that's what I'm gonna say. You know, when he said in Psalms 82 and verse 6, when he said, "Ye are gods," he gave, when you read 2nd Ezra 6 and 55, he made the world for our sakes. So we would be gods of the earth, because we were supposed to have power and dominion over the earth. So we would be little gods. So like the brother Azrael was saying, it's more so like a title rather than an actual name.
Right. And that's the whole thing that we're getting into, man. Title is not a name, a title can be referred to as a name, because if you only know somebody as the title, you're going to associate with that being that person's name. For instance, if you told a child from their youthhood up, just call you doctor, right? On your birth certificate, right? Your name is probably Latravius McTwavius Swain. You know what I'm saying? That's on your birth certificate. That's your government. That's your given and family name. But your title officially would be Dr. Latravius McTwavius Swain, right? But if you're talking to a child and you just tell them, hey, just call me doctor, that child from their youthhood up is just going to refer to you as doctor, and they're going to associate with that being your name. But you got to understand, it's just a title. It's not a representation of your name, which is why we want to go here and Brother Baruch, could you read Psalms chapter 83 and verse 18?
It's the book of Psalms, chapter 83 and verse 18. That men may know that thou, whose name alone is Jehovah, art the most high over all the earth.
Again, thou whose name alone is Jehovah, thou art the most high over all the earth, right? Again, Strong's H 3068, right, is going to say Yehovah, right? Which again is when you see the Lord, it's literally in place of Jehovah, the existing one, the proper name of the one true God, unpronounced except with the vowel pointings of H136. Now, again, this is this is I don't think there would be a time where you see Christ being referred to as Jehovah. And even if there is a time that you could point to, I'm going to guarantee you, right? I'm going to guarantee you there's going to be I guess you could say context behind everything, right? The biggest thing the biggest thing I'm big on is uh, context does not supersede etymology. I mean, excuse me, etymology does not necessarily supersede context, right? So that's kind of what I try to stand to when it comes to the Bible and how to define and better understand the scripture sometimes. I just have to remember that etymology does not necessarily supersede the context, which is why uh, even when we're going to the etymology of the word God, which is in the Greek theos, or in the Hebrew, it's Elohim, which is why we're looking at the context and how they're used to show you as well, even in the context, it's not even referring to Christ as the Most High God, right? But let's keep going. Like I said, there was more to get on that. Um, we read Psalms 45. We did Hebrews 1, 8, and 9. So now we're getting into the Christ's own testimony of his quote unquote divinity or subordination, right? His own testimony. So the first precept we want to bring out is John chapter 14 and verse 28. And we know that these are elementary precepts to somebody who studied like ourselves, but at the same time, there's people who don't know how to combat that narrative. So we're just giving you ammunition, right? And there's a couple things that I even learned that were new in this lesson. So let's read this. Let me share my tab in John 14 and 28.
Con. Is the book of John, chapter 14 and 28. Ye have heard how I said unto you, I go away and come again unto you. If ye love me, ye will rejoice, because I said, I go unto the Father, for my Father is greater than I.
This is an unambiguous statement. I'm trying to be TI for a second. This is an unambiguous statement of the peculiar identity of the personification. This is an unambiguous statement of hierarchy, man. Christ is even admitting that the Father is greater than himself, right? But a good point, like the brother Denal brought out, is even sometimes even in Isaiah, man, where it talks about that one man being called the everlasting Father, it doesn't necessarily mean that that person is the Most High, right? But in this context, like we say, etymology does not supersede context, right? So if you believe that the etymology of the word Father meant the highest, right, then let's look at the context. And in this context, we know that even Christ is saying that the Father is greater than himself, right? So that's one elementary. Let's go get another elementary one. We're going to stay in the same book, right? Excuse me, not chapter 17, chapter 20. And let's go down to verse number 17, right? Let's read this in John 20 and 17.
The book of John, chapter 7, and verse number 20.
Nah, 20 and 17.
So, the book of John, chapter 7.
John chapter 20 and verse 17.
John chapter 20 and verse 17.
He's trying to scribe too.
Oh, okay. He trying to scribe, God.
Jesus saith unto her, touch me not, for I am not yet ascended to my Father, but go to my brethren and say unto them, I ascend unto my Father and your Father, and to my God.
And to what?
And to my
God.
God.
Okay.
And your God.
Right. So Christ is even saying he's ascending to my God. If Christ is emphatically the Most High, then why is he acknowledging that he has a God over him? Oh, because God the Father But again, there is no such thing as a Trinity. Okay. There's no such thing as a Trinity. We know that I and my father are one, eat a lot of people up, man. But being one with somebody does not make them you. And you being one with them does not make you them, right? The likeness that we like to go to, which we was gonna bring it up in this lesson, but I don't think I want to pull them precepts out only because it's just common sense, man. Man and a wife are supposed to be one flesh, but that does that mean your wife is you? You know what I'm saying? Go ahead, Brother Obadiah.
Yeah, it kind of means like when he said, me and the Father are one, it's kind of like in the sense of like we on one accord. Like when you and your wife, y'all are not the same person, but y'all supposed to like be on one accord, but to come to a common agreement. So it's the same thing with Christ and the Most High God. They're not the same, but they're one when it comes to the mission and what's going on.
Man. And that's the thing. That's why when it comes to the Bible, sometimes all you got to do is read, because when you read, you gain a lot of clarity. And this is a lesson not necessarily for those who may be very well studied and learned, but then again, you can be somebody who's well studied and learned, and we may bring up another angle that you can approach something at. So this lesson can be for anybody, but uh, what I'm saying in its entirety is that don't get lost in the woodworks of reading. Sometimes, again, like the brother Azrael said, our whole premise of going over that whole Theos Elohim segment of our lesson was just to show you that titles are not necessarily names, right? And there's been plenty of people called the same title as Christ. So that's not their name, though. And secondly, more importantly, like the brother Danal said, you just got to remember that even when you see certain words that are being used, you just got to make sense of it and understand that certain words does not give exact uh overall power to somebody, right? Etymology does not supersede context. Always view the context of whatever you're reading, you know, and that'll help you understand what's being said. But again, in this verse right here, Christ calls the Father his God. I mean, it's plain as day. Let's go to another one. Let's go to Mark 20. Matthew 24 and 36, right? It's in Mark 2, but we're just gonna go to Matthew 24. But it's in Mark 2. It's in Mark 13, I want to say. Matthew chapter 24. Let's read verse number 36, right? And if it's red letter, we know it's Christ speaking. So again, we're getting into this portion of our lesson is getting into Christ even affirming out of his own mouth that he is not the Father. They're not equal, right? Let's read this.
The book of Matthew, chapter 24 and verse 36. But of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only.
But what?
But my Father only.
Only the Father knows. So if Christ is the most high God in his true essence, right? The Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, right? If Christ is in fact the most high, then he should be all knowing. Because again, the most high God knows everything. But how is it that Christ doesn't know everything, right? It says, but of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. We just read that he acknowledged his Father as his God. Now, you're going to have bozos to say, well, this is talking about when Christ was in his physical state, and in his physical state, he acknowledged that God was his Father because he at this time was in the flesh, right? You got bozos that say that. But if that's the case, then how do we make sense of this? Let's go to the book of Acts and we just read. Don't mind us. We're just reading the Bible here. Let's go to Acts chapter 9. And Brother Baruch, if you could, let's read verse number 20. Acts chapter 9 and 20.
This the book of Acts chapter 9, starting at verse 20. And straightway he preached Christ in the synagogues that he is the Son of God.
Now, who is this preaching, right? This is Paul preaching Christ, right, in the synagogues, right? And he taught that Christ is the Son of God. Now, this is after Christ's ascension. So this is when Christ is in the Spirit. Now, if Paul has direct revelation, if Paul has direct manifestation, you know what I'm saying? If he has all this knowledge from Christ, he's learned of Christ, Christ taught him everything he know, like he was his own son. And how is it that how is it that Paul is messing up the divinity of Christ even after Christ ascended? Christ ascended now, so he should be the most high God. So why is Paul on earth lying to people saying that he's the son when he's not? If it only was in the flesh that Christ was not equal to the Father, right? Well, some may say, well, I honestly don't know what some would may say to that, right? Well, let's go to another one, right? The book of Revelation. Let's go to Revelation 2 and 18. You got to deal with these scriptures when you read them, because I don't see how you can get around, even after Christ ascended, Paul is telling people that, hey, he's the Son of God. How is he the Son in his ascension if he was only the Son in his flesh? But in the spirit, now all of a sudden he's still the Son, and he still acknowledges he has a God over him. He doesn't acknowledge he has a God over him. Okay, well, what does this say? Let's read this, Revelation 2 and 18.
He's on brother Denal.
Brother, yeah, it's brother Denal.
Con. It says, and unto the angel of the church in Thyatira, write, these things saith the Lord of God, the Son of God.
Hey, hold on, brother. Start from the top. Let's read it again.
And unto the angel of the church in Thyatira, write, these things saith the Son of God, who hath his eyes like unto a flame of fire, and his feet are like fine brass.
Wait a minute. These things said the Son of God. Now, this is red letter. So even the Son in his spirit form is acknowledging that he's still the Son of the Most High. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, but who is this that has his eyes like a flame of fire and feet like unto fine brass? Oh, that could be anybody. What? What you mean that could be anybody? Okay, that's the game you want to play. Well, let's read this. Let's take the street corner approach to explaining how we know what Christ looked like, right? Let's read this in Revelation 1 and 1, and then we'll jump down to the characteristics. It's on you, brother Azrael.
Yeah, he put in the chat real quick, I think.
Okay, con. Right. So we're gonna read Revelation 1, and then we'll jump down to the tab.
The book of Revelation, chapter 1 and verse 1. The revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave unto him.
Right. The revelation of who?
Of Jesus Christ.
Okay. Which God gave unto him, right? We get that. We don't need to read the rest of this because we already identified who is this revealing, right? Now let's jump down to verse number 14, right? Matter of fact, 13.
Verse 13. And in the midst of the seven candlesticks, one like unto the Son of Man, clothed with the garment down to the foot, and girt about the paps with the golden girdle.
Right. Hey, like the brother Azrael always break down on the streets, he wear that golden girdle so he won't get thrust through in that fifth rib, right? You thrust through that fifth rib, that's almost like instant death, right? But you can see his feet because it said, again, with the garment down to the foot. So you're going to be able to see his feet. Now let's read this in verse 14.
Verse 14. His head and his hairs were white like wool, as white as snow. And his eyes were as a flame of fire.
Hold on now. In Revelation 2 and 18, it just said the Son of Man, right? The Son of God, whose eyes were like a flame of fire. And what does it say in verse 15?
And his feet like unto fine brass.
But how fine?
As if they burned in a furnace.
Dang. So the characteristics are the same in Revelation 1 when it talks about the revelation of Christ. Is the same thing that you read here in Revelation 2 and 18, Brother Denal. If you can read this one more time.
2 and 18. And unto the angel of the church in Thyatira, write, these things saith the Son of God, who has his eyes like unto a flame of fire, and his feet are like fine brass.
So Christ is referred to as the Son of God in here. We just read how when he was revealed, he had these same characteristics. Eyes like a flame of fire, feet like unto fine brass, right? And he's still being referred to as the Son of God. So that's why I'm saying, like, even when it comes to the nitty-gritty of people trying to go, let's go back to Matthew real quick. Even when it goes back to people trying to say, well, Christ in his physical form was acknowledging that he was the weaker vessel or he was submitted to the Father, right? Then why is it the same thing even in his spiritual form, in his ascension? Paul taught that he was the Son of God. He just confirmed out of his own mouth he was the Son of God. There's things that people are going to have to answer that the Bible doesn't support. So no, Jesus Christ is not the most high God, right? Regardless of what the title states, you got to do some reading and researching to prove these things. And when you look at the harmonization of the Bible just doesn't support that narrative. And there's nothing wrong with believing, there's nothing wrong with having a belief in Christ. It's wrong when you confuse Christ and his power and authority with that of the Father, right? We know the Father gave him power and authority. Nobody's debating that. We know that he has a divine, a certain divine being like nobody else, but at the same time, that doesn't make him the most high God. Again, he was given these things, right? So just keep that in mind, right? But let's read Matthew 24:36 one more time.
This is the book of Matthew, chapter 24 and verse 36. But of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only.
Right. But his Father only, right? If Jesus were co-equal in all aspects of deity, man, he would share the Father's I guess you could say omniscience. I don't know how to pronounce that word, man.
Omnipresent, omnipresent.
Omniscient,
It's not,
omniscient.
Omniscient.
I don't know how to pronounce it.
I know how
Omniscient.
to pronounce. I know me thinking
Omniscience, I
about it.
guess.
Me thinking about it making me butcher it.
Yeah, omniscience. I guess that's how you pronounce it, but uh
Omniscient.
his ignorance, and I'm not calling Christ ignorant, but when I'm saying his ignorance here, it just demonstrates, functional subordination, man. He's not the Father, right? But let's go into some more, right? John 5:19, right? John 5:19. Because again, we're just getting Christ's testimony right now that he is emphatically not the Son. I mean, he's emphatically not the Most High God himself, right? Let's read this John 5:19.
The book of John, chapter 5, starting at verse 19. Then answered Jesus and said unto them, Verily, verily, I say unto you, the Son can do nothing of himself, but what he seeth the Father do. For what things soever he doeth, these also doeth the Son likewise.
Hey, we just affirmed that he can't do nothing of himself. Only what the Father, only what the Father does is what Christ can do, right? The Father has the ability to kill somebody and raise them up again. Christ doesn't have that same ability unless the Father gives it to him, right? Not saying that he hasn't done it, right? We've seen Christ raise somebody from the dead. But why? Because the Father has to do it. If Christ can't do it of himself, then he cannot be the most high. Let's jump down to verse 30.
Verse 30. I can I can of my own self do nothing. As I hear it, I judge, and my judgment is just, because I seek not my own will, but the will of the Father which has sent me.
Again, man, I can do nothing of my own self. As I hear, I judge, right? And my judgment is just. Why is his judgment just? Because his judgment is coming straight from the Father. Because why? He doesn't seek his own will, but the will of the Father which sent him. This is further testimony that Christ is literally saying, I am not the most high God. And we already just went into Acts and Revelation to prove that Jesus Christ is not the Most High God, even in his spiritual form. They're not even on the same level. So there's no reason to make the assumption, well, it's just because he's in the flesh. No, because even in the spirit, they're on two different levels, right? Let's go to Luke 22, right? Because we're trying to get through these precepts. I got about 100 more precepts, and then we can get off this thing. We finna read the whole book of Genesis while we on here.
I had a point real quick.
Go ahead, King. I can't see you, so go ahead.
Brother said we're gonna read the whole Genesis. But yeah, man, that makes sense why Christ he was asking, Father, if it's your will, can this cup pass, can this cup pass by me? Because he don't control nothing. It's the Most High. So he had to ask if it's your will. So it's like that. Go back to that point you just said, or what Christ said. Man, he can't do nothing except the Father lets him. So he had to ask for permission, from the Father, by his cup.
Right. Again, man, that's a mighty point. You just can't get around Christ's own testimony, man. The things that he says, I mean, that's his word verbatim. He never said he was equal to the Father, never at one point, right? The only people that try to make that assumption is man because of certain verses. But that's why, again, it's important to know how these verses read. You got to know the context, right? And you got to understand what meaneth these parables. But Christ spoke in parables because it wasn't meant for everybody to understand. So maybe some people just not going to get it because it wasn't meant for them to understand. Everybody can't be the righteous. Some people got to be the wicked to execute God's plan. And that's not even me excluding myself, because the Lord can give me over to a reprobate mind at any given time. I pray he doesn't, you know what I'm saying? But nobody's above the Lord's judgment. Nobody's above the Lord's reproach. Nobody, no matter who you are, the Lord can make an example out of anybody, right? But I just want to get into a couple of points real quick. We're going back to the blue letter, right? Let's go to Colossians 1:15. We were just having a conversation about this at the Feast of Dedication, Day 7, right, in Augusta, Georgia, with, the Elder Uriah hosting, and, always having good conversation when his sons are around, because one of them sons, who I'm not going to name, boy, they have some conversations that start conversations that you just start talking about, right? But let's read this in Colossians 1:15.
Brother Obadiah started that conversation, by the way.
Nah, brother. That was a conversation that was started 2 weeks ago at camp, brother. I just brought it back to life.
Well, let's put it like this.
It was ended and you brought it back up because you were a sore loser. I'm not going to say no more.
Brother Obadiah brought the conversation up. Okay. Well, I came later on. So,
but it was his conversation at first, though.
It was?
Yeah.
Well, let's read this in Colossians 1:15, if you can, Brother Denal.
Colossians 1:15. Who is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of every creature.
Right. So, who is the? Nah, you good. You good. The image of the invisible God, man. Guess what? When you're an image, right? Let's look at this word image. Let's listen to it.
Strong's G 1504. Icon.
Icon. That's where you get the word icon from, the Greek word icon, right? And icon is just an image, right? Who is the icon of the Most High God? The firstborn of every creature, right? So the icon is the representation of another, not the original, right? It's not the authentic. So Christ is an icon because he's the image of the Father. He's not the Father, right? Let's go to the firstborn, right? The word firstborn in the Greek, what is this?
Strong's G 4416. Prototokos.
Or where you get the modern day word prototype, right? The first of its kind, right? So Christ is the prototype. He's the firstborn of every creature, right? And right here, I mean, this term itself implies two things, priority in time and sovereignty, right? In rank. So it just means that he was number one and he's the first of its type, meaning he's put above everything like unto himself to an extent, right? It's not necessarily saying first created in a material sense, but it does position him in relation to the creation as supreme ruler, right? That's why you get verses like we read in 1 Corinthians, and let's go back to it real quick. That's why verses like 1 Corinthians 8:6 say, let's go to 1 Corinthians 9. Do it like that. Let me share this real quick. Let's read this one more time in 1 Corinthians 8:6. Brother Denal.
1 Corinthians, what chapter? Chapter
8. Chapter 8, verse 6.
Verse 6. But to us there is but one God, the Father, of whom are all things, and we in him, and one Lord Jesus Christ, by whom are all things, and we by him.
Right. That's why you get verses that read this, like it says, by whom are all things, and we by him. Because going back to Colossians 1, remember, Christ is the prototype, right? He's not only the prototype, he's an icon. He was a living icon at one point. He was an image of God, right? And he was the prototype, the first of every creature, right? So that's what gives him sovereignty and rank. And that's why we have verses that say, in things, and by whom are all things, and we by him, But let's go to somewhere else. Revelation 3 and 14, right? Revelation 3 and 14. And that's why, again, it's important to get into what the words say to help you understand what's being said. The message is kind of conveyed. Remember, etymology does not supersede context, but that's why the verses that we're going to, even in the context, is still not affirming that Christ is the Most High. But let's read this right here in Revelation 3 and 14, if you can, Brother Azrael.
The book of Revelation, chapter 3 and verse 14. And unto the angel of the church of the Laodiceans, write these things, saith Salakia. And unto the angel of the church of the Lord, Salakia. And of the, let me start.
Take 3.
Book of Revelation, chapter 3 and verse 14. And unto the angel of the church of the Laodiceans, write, these things saith thee, amen, the faithful and true witness, the beginning of the creation of God.
The beginning of the creation of God, right? I don't even have to break it down because, again, the beginning of the creation, we just read in Colossians 1:14 that Christ was the firstborn of every creature, right? So the beginning, right? Let's see, where is that word at? Salakia. Right here, right? Let's listen to it.
Strong's G 746. Arche. Arche.
Right. So again, this is the origin of the creation of God, and it strongly suggests what I would say. He is the first of God's creative acts, right? Going into Christ, and the one who through everything else was created, as like we read in John 1 and 3, 1 Corinthians 8 and 6, and Colossians 1 and 16. Because when you go back and read Colossians 1 and 16, this is what it says right here. Let's read this in Colossians 1 and 16, if you can, Brother Denal, because I know you read verse 15. So let's read verse 16.
Verse 16, it says, for by him were all things created that are in heaven and that are in the earth, visible and invisible, whether they be thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. All things were created by him and for him.
Right, man. Again, this is one of those things that people try to say, well, created by him and for him. That's explicitly talking about Christ, but not necessarily, because again, even Christ himself, excuse me, I said that wrong. They say by him and for him means that Christ is the Most High, right? But that's not necessarily true, because again, like we just went into the etymology of what these words mean, who is the image of the invisible God? Image means icon. Icon is a representation of a figure, not the original. And prototype just means first of its kind, right? So Christ was the first creation, and that's why we're reading it like we are here. And then when you go back to Revelation 3 and 14, it talks about the beginning of the creation of God, right? It's not saying anything different than we've been saying all this lesson, right? But the foundational part is that he's still a creation, right? The Most High God doesn't have a creator. He is the creator, right? And through him and through the vessels that he used, created the earth and the world and all that dwells therein, the firmaments, everything. Now, last segment, and we'll be very brief. We'll be very brief in this because, again, what we just went into was the firstborn, the beginning of God's creation, right? That's why we went to Colossians and we understood the Greek, and that's why we went to Revelation 3. Before that, we was going into Christ's own testimony that he wasn't the Most High, right? And before that, we was going into understanding the words or the title of God and understanding the Hebrew and Greek for Elohim and Theos. Now, to close, let's start going into some of these counter arguments, right? Like I said, simple counter arguments. Because we already did counter arguments part 1 when people were saying, well, when you read stuff like Matthew 24 and 36, it's talking about Jesus in the flesh. We already killed that and destroyed those points in Acts 9 and Revelation 3. So let's read this in John chapter 10 and verse 30. share my tab. Let's read this in John 10 and 30.
Is it your turn, Israel? Or my
No,
turn?
it's your turn. It's your turn. Oh,
My turn. Okay.
yes,
This
sir.
is the book of John, chapter 10 and verse 30. I and my Father are one.
Right. The context is about works and purpose, not necessarily ontology, right? So in John 17 and 11, and then 21 and 22, matter of fact, let's just read it. Let's just read it. Ain't no point of just sitting up here talking about it. Let's just read it.
17 and
Oh,
what?
yeah. Oh, I'm gonna have you still read. So let's read John chapter 17. Let's read verse 11, and then we're gonna jump down to 21 and 22.
Come. And now he said, verse 11, and now I am no more in the world, but these are in the world. And I come to thee, Holy Father, keep through thy own name those whom thou hast given me, that they may be one as we are.
Yeah, so the Father, so Christ is really sitting up here saying that he wants people to be one, the ones that he has given him, which is the disciples, to be one as they're one, right? So let's read in verse 21 and 22, right? Let's read this in verse 21 and 22, right?
Verse 21, that they all may be one as thou, Father, art in me, and I in thee, that they also may be one with us, one in us, that the world may believe that thou hast sent me. And the glory which thou gavest me, I have given them, that they may be one, even as we are one.
So the same glory that the Most High
Right,
gave Christ is the same glory that Christ has given us. So now are we the Most High? The same
right.
way Christ is the one in the Father, Christ wants us to be one with him and the Father the same way he is with the Father. So now are we the Most High? Again, don't get confused by things where it says I and the Father are one. Like I said earlier, it was no need to pull up Genesis 2 where it talks about a man and his wife being one flesh in 1 Corinthians 6:16, where it says he that joined to a harlot is one body,
Yeah.
for the two twain shall be one flesh. Because at the end of the day, you just got to understand that when it says somebody is we're one, it just means one accord of the same spirit of the same mind. Doesn't necessarily make you the same person in existence, right? It just puts you on one understanding with one consent, right? The same way we go to Psalms. Let's pull that in Psalms 83. Psalms chapter 83. And let's read verse number 2 and 3, Brother Baruch.
Psalms chapter 83, certain at verse 2. For lo, thy enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They,
Right.
they have taken crafty counsel against thy people, the consultant against thy hidden ones.
Let's read verses 4 and 5 as well, Salakia.
Verse 4, they have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, and that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent. They
No, they're the same. Hold on, wait. They're the same nation because they consulted together with one consent. They were on one accord with this plan. So it wasn't multiple nations that did this. So when in starting at verse 6, when it starts naming all these nations that had this plan and devised this plan against us, the author was wrong for writing all these nations. It should just be what? Salakia. It
The
should
one
just
that
be one because they consulted together with one consent. They were on one accord, right? You can finish this out, Baruch.
It said, for they have consulted together with one consent, they are confederate against thee.
Right. So it just doesn't make sense to assume that because in John chapter 10, right, in verse number 30, that where it talks about I and the Father are one, now all of a sudden we just have to explicitly assume that, oh, that makes Jesus Christ the Most High God. When we just went to John 17 to prove that Christ even prayed for us to be the same way, for us to be one with him and the Father the same way he is one in the Father, right?
that's
So
really a cut for real. That's really a cut for sure.
I mean, it just doesn't make sense, right? Because again, uh, yeah, it just doesn't make sense, man. And that's just simple. That's just simple, right? There was some more I wanted to get, but like I said, we don't have to go into a lot of what I have in my notes, only because it's only gonna it's only repeating the same points that we've already made, right? Um, let's go to Philippians 2 and 5, right? Philippians 2 and 5. Oops.
And then also knowing that, 'cause we were talking about this before the call. I people like to run the Revelations 1 and 6 too, but knowing that what we were talking about is God is more so like a title than an actual person, it make more sense on why it was worded that way.
I'm spelling it right. Why I keep saying I'm spelling it wrong?
Just try to put in the what's the names when it does that, the first, the acronym or the abbreviation.
Yeah, I might just have to do that. Right. But let's read this. Philippians 2, and let's start at verse number 5, and we're reading 5 and 6. We could read 7, but let's read 5 and 6, man.
This is Philippians 2, starting at verse number 5. It says, "Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus."
So if Jesus Christ is the most high God, right? He's saying, let us be of the same mind. Right? Let's read the verse 6.
Who being in the form of God, thought it not robbery to be equal with God.
Now, the first time I ever heard this verse was in a video that the lead instructor, brother Yahweh Ben Yahawada of the Sons of Thunder Israelites, he was having a conversation with somebody about this verse in particular. And this was many moons ago when we heard this, the first time he was breaking this down, and I heard this in the way he explained it. But if Christ is making himself, if this is saying in verse 6 that whom being in the form of God thought it not robbery to be equal with God, if you're reading that as in Christ saying he didn't think it was wrong to make himself equal with the Most High God, then let's hold this, right? And let's go back to John 10 and 33. John 10 and 33, right? Let me share this, right? Let's read this in John 10 and 33, Brother Denal, if you can.
John's 10 and 33. The Jews answered him, saying, For a good work we stone thee not, but for blasphemy, and because that thou, being a man, maketh thyself God.
So they were trying to stone him for making himself equal to God, not because he was doing evil works, because they said, for a good work we stone thee not, right? Because he does good works, right? But for blasphemy, and because that thou, being a man, makest thyself God. So you'll read Philippians 2 and think that, oh, well, then the Jews are right for trying to stone him, because in here, in verse 6, he says, being in the form of God, thought it not robbery to make himself equal with God, right? But let's read verse 7.
Verse number 7. But made himself of no reputation, and took upon him the form of a servant, and was made in the likeness of men.
Right, man. So you got to think about what this is saying. This is not saying that in verse 6, Christ thought it was okay to make himself equal with God. What it's really saying is, like Brother Yahweh brought out, is just Christ didn't even think to make himself equal with God. He didn't even think to be on the same level and scale. Not necessarily saying, let's be on the same level, right? And if that's the case, like you say in verse 5, why would it say, let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ? So again, that's another point to make, to say that, well, if Christ is saying he's the most high God, then we should be thinking that we're the most high God too. Just certain things, right? A thing to be grasped is what it really reads as, I think, in the Greek. And this word doesn't necessarily mean like something possessed and clung to. It just means like a thing's to be seized or snatched at, right? And this this passage, right, we just read in verse Philippians 2, 5, and 6, all it is saying is that Christ, through existing in God's form, right, which is like a position of high honor, he just didn't consider equality with the Most High something to be grasped, right? He humbled himself, right, as he should, because he was what? He was made in the likeness of men. He didn't create himself, right? So he didn't even think himself to be on the same scale as the Most High, which is why, again, when people try to insert that he is, it's kind of disrespectful to him, because we went into his own testimonies that he's not, right?
Man, just like you harped on too, man, that's the main point where it says, let this mind be in you, right? So if you say that, just like the brother Isaiah was going into, that's like saying that you can think that you can be equal with God too, right?
Right.
So when you draw that conclusion, you got to understand that that's not what it's saying. You got to go back to the drawing board and make sense of it.
Con,
Bitcoin,
man.
Bitcoin.
Yeah. So
He would not think to rob God of his position, right?
right.
He would not think that, right? That's
He
all it's
didn't think. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm saying. That's all it's saying.
Yeah. He didn't think equality with the Most High God something to be grasped. Now, look, I left a lot of food on the table, man, because not because
You ain't leave too much food on the table, brother.
look, man, there's so many more, man. When I tell you, I got a plethora of notes in my phone going into this lesson. We could be on here for another 3 hours. I'm not even kidding, but we're not going to be. So what I'm saying is that, you know, this is kind of like, you know, getting your feet in the water a little bit, you know, jumping off the porch a little bit. Hopefully this lesson was edifying into your understanding, and it gave you kind of more legs to stand on, some more ammunition. I know we covered a lot of elementary precepts, but if you want to know more, hit us up and we'll do another video going in further detail. We'll turn this into a whole series because, again, there's so many scriptures and points and things that we could have addressed, but we just not going to today. This is just really for, like we say, just getting your feet wet, getting your feet in the water, getting out the kiddie pool and actually going down the stairs of the pool, sitting on the edge. So again, most high willing, you were edified in this lesson. I ain't got nothing else to add. Brothers got anything else? Bible scriptures, points, anything.
Come, man, mighty lesson. And like I was gonna tell the brothers after we get in the lobby, I was gonna say, hey man, we got these precepts right here in the comments section, man. Go ahead and precept your Bible up and title it "Is Jesus God?" So if anybody ever asks you or wants to go into that conversation, you'll have these precepts on hand to go into, and you should be studious and witty enough to break each one down. Right? So mighty lesson.
Yeah, it's a lot of, it's like your brother said, man, it's a lot of precepts on here. So, and I took, like I said, I took some off, not for the second time, really not for the second time at all, but it was just more so because I want to save something for next time. You know, it's just like a woman. That's why nowadays you got a lot of brothers that really is desensitized to learning how to properly love a woman, because we got so many women willing to show us their whole body for the free ski on the internet. We don't got to work hard to see them goodies no more. You know what I'm saying? So what I'm saying is that sometimes you just got to leave something for the imagination. You know, you got to leave something for the imagination. You know what I'm saying? And that's what we're going to do with this. We're going to leave something for the imagination. So that way somebody will want to come back and ask more questions. But hey, with that, man, Shabbat Shalom. Brothers will be teaching the word today. So remember, like Christ said, if you're not gathering, you scattering, right? And our whole mission is to gather the people together. Oh, ye nation not desired. That's Zephaniah 2:1. Shabbat Shalom. Lord be with y'all.
Shalom.